What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another episode of J Pit Fishing. Today we're out here at the good old pond and we're going to be doing some summer bass fishing. It's actually a cooler one today. It's just peaking out at 90 degrees. The wind's blowing, so that'll be nice. So we're going to try and figure out some ways to make them bite, even when they don't want to. There's one. Got him. Alright, so what I'm thinking as far as bass fishing goes is obviously it's a summertime pattern. So these fish are going to be down deep as they can get in this pond, or they're going to find the shadiest spot they can, which all on the back wall there's a lot of shade. So for now, I'm going to go straight into the depths. I know there's a tree, a laid down tree out there off of a ledge. So that where that tree's sticking out is nice and shallow. Right off the end of it, it gets pretty deep, like, I don't know, 10 foot maybe, 12 foot, I don't know, something like that. And there's a laid down tree down there that I have caught like 30 or 40, 50 fish off whenever they get schooled up on it really good. So I'm just gonna try and find some offshore structure, something that they can hold on while they're down there deep. Because as you can tell, this is kind of like a gravelly bottom pond, but there's a lot of nasty muck, like a lot of silt and just nasty dead algae. And these fish aren't really gonna wanna sit on that. They're gonna wanna find some sort of hard bottom that they can sit on out there deep. So, okay guys, so when you're tying on a drop shot, there's gonna be two things you need. You're gonna need a hook. I like these little robo-worm hooks. I think they're pretty nice. I have a little hook keeper for worms, and they're 100% weedless. They're pretty nice. So the way you're gonna start your drop shot rig, you're gonna have the hook point facing you, and then you're gonna take your line and you're gonna go through the eye of the hook. That's the most important step when tying a drop shot, or else your weight's gonna be hanging on the wrong side. So then you can just tie your knot, whatever type of knot you tie. I usually tie a Palomar on a drop shot rig. When you tie a Palomar knot, the size of your tag is going to be the size of the loop you use. So you can see here that I have a pretty big loop. So that means I'm going to have a pretty long tag in. So I'm just going to tie that. Then pull that tag in. There we go. Okay, so now you're gonna take hook point facing you once again, just like when you started. And you're gonna take your line and go back through the front of that eye of that hook. So now if you look real close, you should be able to see that knot pull around and pops up. So now you have your hook on a line just like that. Then you're gonna take your weight. I usually use like a teardrop like this, just teardrop lead weight. And I just tie 2 overhand knots real quick and easy. There's 1. There's 2. Just like that. Just tie it on however you want. Trim the tag end. This is why when you tie a drop shot, you need to tie it with the hook point facing you and going to the front of the eye, because whenever it's sitting on bottom at this point, it'll be sitting just like this with the hook point up toward the top of the water. So when a fish comes over and grabs it, that hook point is going to be right in the top of their mouth, giving you the perfect hook set every time. And then just whatever soft plastic you have, whether it's a swim bait or a worm, just gonna run it up on there. Sink the hook back into the worm. That's the weedless approach. The drop shot's a technique I don't see a lot of people use in a variety of situations. Like, they usually just use a drop shot if they see fish on the graph, or maybe if they're fishing like a bluff wall. I really don't see as many people as I think you should see pick up a drop shot and just like drag it over a brush pile, or drag it over some rocks, or just drag it over a shell bed. Like, a drop shot's a really good presentation, a really good finesse presentation that the fish usually won't see, especially offshore, because people always try and power fish, and if they're not power fishing, they're going to throw something like a shaky head or Ned rigs, stuff that's on bottom. When you fish a drop shot like this, it's not 100% on bottom. It's a little bit suspended off the bottom. And that could be the difference in getting bit and walking away from the spot and thinking it's terrible. So I just recommend, next time you go fishing, if you find a situation where the structure, cover, wherever you're fishing, looks really good and you think there should be a fish there but you're not getting bit, maybe pick up a drop shot and try that if you haven't already. It could be the key that you need to get those fish to bite. It's running straight at me because he's a little bitty. But he wanted the worm. That right there, guys. Little bass on a little worm. It's summer fishing. You'll go from this to a 5-pounder. Not in this pond, but on a lake, you'll go from this to a 5-pounder. Same exact bait, same conditions. You won't even believe it. I'm gonna throw it back to that same spot. I caught that off of that tree I was talking about earlier, a lay down tree. I threw it over, as soon as it hit bottom, he picked up and ran off with it. To me, a drop shot's a really fun way to catch them. A lot of people don't like it, but I know a lot of people hate the fairy wand, sissy stick, whatever you want to call it. And I like flipping a jig into the thickest crap you can find and pulling a 4-pounder as much as the next guy, but it's just as fun to me to go out in 20, 30 feet of water on a lake, throw a drop shot and pull a 4-pounder up. Like, the fight is insane. Oh, there's one. Down there deep on the drop shot. Little football here. He's got those 8-pounder jeans. Pretty little fish. Alright guys, so I'm going to try and give you a little bit of an in-depth approach on how to fish a drop shot. So you're going to cast it out and let it sink all the way to bottom. Once it hits bottom, what I like to do is just pick up, leave a little bit of slack in my line, and just give it a couple shakes. And then just hold your line tight. And just see if you get bit. If you don't, after a couple of seconds, depending on your water clarity, this pond's pretty clear, so I can drag it quite a distance because the fish can see. I kind of like to think of it as like a circle. So where my bait's sitting in the middle of the circle, and the fish have probably 4 to 5 foot visibility. And there's one right there. Just drag it up. So you just drag it like that, and then you catch fish. Alright. Thanks, bud. Just emphasizing my point there. So you can drag it just like a Carolina rig or a jig or anything else, and you can still catch fish that way. But what I was going to say is, once you finish dragging after, depending on the water clarity, so like a place like here where it's like 4 foot visibility, I would probably drag it a good at least 8 feet, maybe 12 feet. You just want to drag it far enough away from where you were that you're fishing for new fish. But on a muddy water lake, yes, you can throw a drop shot on a muddy water lake. I'd only drag it like 2 or 3 foot and then start shaking it again. So I hope that kind of helps you guys out. A drop shot is one of my absolute favorite techniques to catch bass. It has to be. It's one of the techniques that I kind of first started to learn whenever I learned how to be versatile and you know, fish more than just 2 lures. Because basically all I used to fish was a wacky worm and then a fluke and maybe a Texas rig here and there. But when I started trying to branch out, I picked up a drop shot, and I found in a lot of situations where like a wacky worm couldn't sink far enough, a fluke wasn't working, or the Texas rig just wasn't getting bit. Basically I was only covering either the top or the bottom of the water column. And so whenever I learned how to throw a drop shot, I was finally learning how to catch those suspended fish. So even on tough days, I could go out and I could, if they were on shad, I could put a fluke on my drop shot and I could catch bass that way. And if they were on creature baits, you could put a creature bait on a drop shot. I mean, you can put any soft plastic on a drop shot and catch bass. So it is just a really cool way, cool new way that I had found to catch bass. There he is. Another tip I could give you guys that you might not hear from a lot of people, because it's kind of controversial whether or not it actually helps or not. But as you've probably seen, I've probably already failed to do it a couple of times, but try not, depending on the situation, I would say for the most part, never set the hook with a drop shot. You don't have to do a jig hook set when you're throwing a drop shot. Really, the best way to hook the fish, because it's so finesse, like I think I'm throwing 20-pound braid to like an 8-pound fluorocarbon leader, which is still pretty heavy, but this water's kind of stained, so I can get away with it. The best way to get that little white wire hook to penetrate and lock into the top of their mouth without, you know, breaking your line or bending out your hook is just reel set. So here in a second, when I get a bite, I'll show y'all what I mean. So whenever you're fishing and you get a bite, you're gonna raise your rod tip up slowly. See, raise your rod tip up slowly and just reel. And that's gonna get you a good hook set, and that fish can thrash and he can't come off. It's right in the top or side of the mouth. Look at that. That's just reel setting. I didn't even set the hook. Look at that. Poked all the way through. That fish was pinned. He probably wasn't getting off there even if he wanted to. So I think reel setting works really well, and give it a try. Golly, that didn't even hit bottom and that fish was on it. That was not a very good reel set there, but you know, it's hard to do sometimes. Fish catches you off guard. But look what happens when you set the hook instead of reel set. Hope y'all can see that. You see that giant hole that it made? If that fish were to come back, that hook can pop out so much easier. So if that was like a 4-pounder that you hooked in the tournament and you set the hook and ripped his mouth like that, you're a lot more likely to lose that fish than just reel setting and basically only poking through in that one little spot. So when I'm reel setting, I don't like my drag super loose. I tighten it up quite a bit because I'm not going to be putting that shock into a line that would really need that drag. I'm just going to be slowly loading up on the line, and it's a lot less likely to break. So I tighten down my drag a little bit just to be sure that I can penetrate that hook all the way through the fish's mouth when I'm reel setting. I think that's kind of an important tip, because I don't want you guys going out there with your drag backed off like half the pros you see nowadays, where they're spinning 40 yards of line off of their spool just because their drag's so loose. Like, tighten up your drag, get the fish in the boat. Don't have it too tight, but don't be sitting there fighting it like it's a monster when it's a 2-pounder.
What's up, guys? Once again, I realized that I forgot to record an outro for this video, so I'm just gonna sum it up. This is kind of gonna be the start of a new series called How To's. I'm gonna be trying to do a bunch of videos on how to fish certain lures certain times of the year. So if y'all enjoyed the video and y'all are looking forward to the new series, please hit subscribe, hit the like button, ring the bell. Thanks for watching, and as always, you have what it takes.